Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, and welcome to day 245 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. So, Sister Faustina is at the vacation house, and I don't know if she went there because she's sick or if she went there and her sickness gets worse while she's supposed to be on vacation. It's not very clear. However, we're going to see that she is suffering a lot. And she gets a visit from St. Joseph. And so since this is the year of St. Joseph 2021, if you're listening to it in this year, I thought it would be a good time to talk about St. Joseph. So our readings today are from Notebook 3, numbers 1201 through 1208. I feel so unwell here, however, that I am obliged to stay in bed. I feel strange, sharp pains all through my chest. I cannot even move my hand. One night I had to lie quite motionless, as it seemed to me that if I budged, everything in my lungs would tear. The night was endless. I united myself to Jesus crucified, and I implored the Heavenly Father on behalf of sinners. It is said that maladies of the lungs do not cause such sharp pains, but I suffer these sharp pains constantly. My health has deteriorated so much here that I must remain in bed. And Sister N, probably Sister Helen, says I will not improve because the climate of Rabka is not good for every sick person. I could not even go to Holy Mass or receive Holy Communion today, but amidst the sufferings of body and soul, I kept on repeating, "May the Lord's will be done. I know that your bounty is without limit." Then I heard an angel who sang out my whole life history and everything it comprised. I was surprised, but also strengthened. St. Joseph urged me to have a constant devotion to him. He himself told me to recite 3 prayers, the Our Father, Hail Mary, and Glory Be, and the Memorare, once every day. He looked at me with great kindness and gave me to know how much he is supporting this work of mercy. He has promised me this special help and protection. I recite the requested prayers every day and feel his special protection. August 1st, 1937. One-day retreat. A retreat of suffering. O Jesus, in these days of suffering, I am not capable of any kind of prayer. The oppression of my body and soul has increased. O my Jesus, you do see that your child is on the decline. I am not forcing myself further, but simply submitting my will to the will of Jesus. O Jesus, you are always Jesus to me. When I went to confession, I did not even know how to confess. However, the priest, probably Father Casimir Ratkovich, recognized the condition of my soul at once and said to me, "Despite everything, you are on the way to salvation. You are on the right path. But God may leave your soul in this darkness and obscurity until death, and the former light may never return. But in all things, abandon yourself to the will of God." Today, I started a novena to Our Lady of the Assumption for 3 intentions. First, that I may see the Reverend Dr. Sapotsko. Second, that God would hasten this work. And third, for the intention of my country. August 10th. Today, I am returning to Krakow in the company of one of the sisters. My soul is shrouded in suffering. I am continually uniting myself to him by an act of the will. He is my power and strength. May you be blessed, O God, for everything you send me. Nothing under the sun happens without your will. I cannot penetrate your secrets with regard to myself, but I press my lips to the chalice you offer me. So as you can see, it's not quite clear why Sister Faustina went to the vacation house. I don't know if she went because she is somewhat sickly and they thought that the mountain air would help her, and when she gets there, it's not going well and it's not helping her, because the one sister tells her sometimes this climate isn't good for every kind of sick person. Or if she went there for some R&R and while she was there, she got more sick. It's not exactly clear, but In any case, she is suffering quite a bit. She is talking like the end is near, and she is having trouble doing much of anything. She can't even move her hand. She's really struggling to pray. She's not going to Mass or receiving Holy Communion. And so she's very much suffering, and she ends up returning to Krakow with the company of one of her sisters. I am guessing because she just needs to get home. She's not doing well there. So, for whatever reason, she went up there. Maybe one of you know and can enlighten us. I'm not for sure. But today, Sister Faustina does get a visit from St. Joseph. And as you know, in this year, 2021, it is the year of St. Joseph. Pope Francis announced that back in December of 2020, and he had this to say about St. Joseph. St. Joseph, as a beloved father, a tender and loving father, an obedient father, an accepting father, a father who is creatively courageous, a working father, a father in the shadows. Pope Francis went on to say that St. Joseph helps us to clearly see the importance of ordinary people who, though far from the limelight, exercise patience and offer hope every day. In this, they resemble St. Joseph, the man who goes unnoticed, a daily, discreet, and hidden presence, who nonetheless played an incomparable role in the history of salvation. Boy, did he ever, being the foster father of Christ. Can only imagine what that was like. So when I was in the Holy Land, we went to Nazareth, and I got to see the Church of St. Joseph, where underneath are some caves that they do believe were St. Joseph's workspace and where he probably lived for a while with the Holy Family, or even before the Holy Family came together. And the thing about Nazareth is that before all the buildings were there, I mean, when you go there today, there's lots and lots of buildings. Mostly people just lived in caves. And Nazareth was a very, very small community. They estimate maybe only about 250 people. So that's why in the Bible, Nathaniel is like, something good comes out of Nazareth? What comes out of Nazareth that's any good? Because it's just so small and so obscure and kind of not known. And so in my mind, it was just so interesting to see how little it once was. It's now a decent size, but I didn't realize that everybody lived in caves. And when you look around, there aren't a lot of trees. And we know that St. Joseph is, the patron saint of carpenters, and even in the Bible, he's talked about as being a carpenter. But our guide, who is a Christian Israeli, he told us that more than likely St. Joseph was just a handyman, a jack of all trades, was able to do a lot. Because there wasn't a lot of trees, he probably wasn't carving a lot of things out of wood. I mean, really, it's kind of barren of trees. It's a very kind of deserty looking climate and geography. So, there's not like a ton of big tall trees for St. Joseph to carve. However, he was probably doing a little bit of carpentry, but also just kind of your handyman, the town handyman. And so instead of calling him that, he's been labeled a carpenter, but he probably had a lot of skills. So the church that we went into for St. Joseph is very pretty. It's very, very simple, which I think is very fitting for St. Joseph, since he is kind of the guy who was in the background, not in the limelight, as Pope Francis said. And there's so much that we can learn from St. Joseph. He had to be a patient man, waiting to see how everything was going to play out with Mary and her not carrying his biological child. He had to leave and go to Egypt and stay there until he was told to go back home. And, I'm sure that took a lot of patience, being removed from your normal homeland and being, kind of a refugee in a way, escaping a violent leader. And he was also very obedient. He was going to leave Mary and try not to shame her, but God told him, no, go and take her as your wife. Everything will be okay. and trusting in God that that was going to work out, because that would have looked really, really, really bad back in the ancient days if, the lady that you're marrying is not carrying your child. I'm curious how they went about explaining that. The Bible never says, they were like, oh, the baby's coming early, or, yo, she got pregnant really quick. Did they just not say anything? I've always wondered what happened there. Were they just silent and people didn't ask questions? I don't know. It's something I would love to know more about. So St. Joseph today, he visits Sister Faustina, and he's encouraging her to pray 3 prayers, and then he tacks one more on the end, every day. And she says, he looked at me with great kindness and gave me to know how much he is supporting this work of mercy. He has promised me this special help and protection. I recite the requested prayers every day and feel his special protection. So, like I said before, when I was Protestant, I didn't have anything to do with Mary except for maybe at Christmas time and listening to the Christmas story. I had even less to do with St. Joseph. I mean, I just didn't even really give the guy a thought because he's not super prominent in the Bible. However, I think he's a great saint to pray to and ask for his intercession. And for those of us that maybe feel like we're not doing enough, or that we're not being successful enough, or that we're not getting into the limelight and making ourselves known, I think praying to St. Joseph is a great person to pray to, because he understands what it's like to not be in the limelight, but at the same time know that you are doing awesome, awesome work. And he definitely was, by being the foster father of Christ and caring for him and the Blessed Mother. So we definitely want to ask St. Joseph to please pray for us in all that we do and help us to be obedient and patient and to be okay with not being in the limelight. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I'll see you back here for day 246. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.